Right now, somewhere in a NASA laboratory, scientists are watching worms age. Not slowly, not over years. In 2 weeks flat, these worms are 1 millimeter long. You cannot see them without a microscope. They have no brain in any meaningful sense, no lungs, no heart. They live their entire lives, birth, growth, adulthood, old age, death, in roughly the same time it takes you to finish a Netflix series. And NASA considers them the most valuable research subjects in the history of spaceflight. Not astronauts, not monkeys, not mice, worms. 35,000 of them have been sent to the International Space Station. They have flown on missions that changed what we know about the human body. They survived one of the worst disasters in NASA history. And right now, they're the single biggest reason scientists believe we might actually be able to send humans to Mars without destroying their bodies in the process. This is the story of the creatures NASA calls the perfect astronauts, and what they have already told us about what space does to the human body. The worm is called Cenorhabditis elegans. Scientists call it C. elegans. Most people have never heard of it. It is a nematode, or roundworm, found in soil all over the planet. It eats bacteria. It does not bite, sting, or cause disease. Under a microscope, it looks like a tiny transparent thread, barely moving, completely unremarkable, and yet it may be the most studied organism in the history of science. Here's why. C. elegans has exactly 959 cells. Every single one of them has been mapped. Its entire nervous system, 302 neurons connected by exactly 7,000 synapses, has been completely documented. We know the name, position, and function of every neuron in its body. No other organism on Earth can claim that, but the number that made NASA pay attention is this one: 97%. 97% of the genes in C. elegans that are linked to human disease have a direct equivalent in your genome. Nearly every gene responsible for muscle deterioration, aging, neurological decline, and immune dysfunction that exists in your body exists in a slightly different form inside this 1 millimeter worm. When this worm gets sick, it gets sick the way you get sick. When its muscles weaken, they weaken the way your muscles weaken. When it ages, and it ages fast, an entire lifespan in 2 to 3 weeks, it ages through the same genetic pathways that age you. That 2 to 3 week lifespan is exactly the point. If NASA wants to understand what 10 years of aging in microgravity does to a human body, it would need to keep an astronaut in space for 10 years. That is not practical. It is not ethical, and it is extraordinarily expensive. But if you send C. elegans to the International Space Station, you get the equivalent of 10 years of human aging data in 2 weeks. Multiple generations of worms, all experiencing microgravity from birth, all showing what space does to a body that shares your biology. In a container the size of your palm. This is why 35,000 have been sent to space, not as passengers, as research subjects running experiments that would be impossible to run any other way. And what they found should concern you. In microgravity, C. elegans loses muscle mass faster than on Earth. Its muscle fibers deteriorate. The genes responsible for maintaining muscle tissue become less active, the same genes that maintain your muscle tissue. The worms develop what researchers describe as a space-induced aging acceleration. They age, in measurable biological terms, faster than their counterparts who stayed on the ground. This is not a worm problem. This is a human problem wearing a worm suit. Every astronaut who has spent extended time aboard the International Space Station returns to Earth with measurable muscle loss, bone density reduction, and cardiovascular changes. Scott Kelly spent 1 year in space and came back with a body that had aged in ways that took years of rehabilitation to partially reverse. His twin brother Mark, who stayed on Earth, aged normally during the same period. See, elegans told us this was coming before we even sent humans up long enough to confirm it. Now here's the part of the story that almost nobody talks about. On February 1st, 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart during re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. All 7 crew members died. Debris scattered across Texas and Louisiana. It was the second shuttle disaster in NASA history, and one of the darkest days the agency has ever experienced. Inside the debris field, searchers found something unexpected: 8 petri dishes, sealed containers, part of AC elegans experiment that had been running aboard Columbia during the mission. The containers had survived re-entry, the structural breakup of the orbiter, and the impact with the ground. When scientists opened them, they found living worms inside. Not all of them, but enough. The worms had survived a catastrophe that killed 7 humans and destroyed a spacecraft. They had endured temperatures and forces that should have ended everything. And in those surviving populations, the data from their experiment, weeks of observations about how their biology had responded to microgravity, was partially recoverable. Scientists published those findings. The Columbia worms contributed to our understanding of spaceflight biology even after the mission that carried them ended in tragedy. Think about that for a moment. 7 trained astronauts with every piece of survival technology NASA could provide did not make it back. The worms did, and they brought data with them. This is what makes C. elegans so valuable beyond just the genetics. They are virtually indestructible as research subjects. They can be frozen, stored, and revived. They can survive conditions that would destroy anything else in a laboratory. You can send 35,000 of them to space in a container that weighs almost nothing. And if something goes catastrophically wrong, there's a real chance some of them make it back with usable data. No other research subject offers that combination. Not mice, not primates, not human cell samples. Just a worm. But the Columbia story points to something much larger that this research is quietly building toward. The biggest unsolved problem in human spaceflight is not propulsion. It is not navigation. It is not funding. It is the human body. A round trip to Mars takes approximately 2.5 years at minimum. During that time, astronauts would be exposed to cosmic radiation at levels that have no equivalent on Earth. They would experience continuous microgravity. They would be isolated under psychological stress and operating further from any rescue than any human being has ever been. And when they arrived, after 2.5 years of physical deterioration, they would need to be capable of working on the Martian surface, not being carried off a landing craft too weak to stand. Right now, we do not have a solution to that problem. What we have is a worm. See, elegans experiments currently running on the ISS are focused on identifying which specific genes regulate muscle preservation in microgravity, and whether those genes can be activated through targeted treatment to slow or prevent deterioration entirely. Early results are genuinely promising. Some gene candidates have already been identified. Human trials on Earth are in early stages. If researchers can find a genetic switch that keeps muscle tissue intact despite the absence of gravity, the path to Mars stops being theoretical. It becomes a logistics problem. And logistics problems, unlike biology problems, have known solutions. Here is what I want you to take away from all of this. The history of space exploration is full of names you know. Armstrong, Aldrin, Gagarin, Glenn, the shuttle crews, the rovers, the telescopes that change how we see the universe. But the organism that may ultimately make permanent human life beyond Earth possible has no name. It has 302 neurons. It lives 2 weeks. It has been to space 35,000 times, and it has no idea. It survived Columbia. It is running experiments on the ISS right now, and somewhere in the data it is already sent back. There may be an answer that makes Mars not just a destination, but a place where humans can actually survive. They are not astronauts. They never volunteered, but they are doing the most important work in the history of human spaceflight, and they are doing it 1 millimeter at a time. If this changed how you see space exploration, hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the things NASA isn't putting in the headlines. Like this video if the Columbia story hit different, and drop a comment. If you could name a space worm, what would you call it? I'll be reading every single one.